Bava Kama Daf Chet Amud Bet, status versus mastery, רכוב ומנהיג חד קני וחד לא קני. This is a piece of Gemara that makes one feel humble very quickly. I certainly found that, realizing that to grasp, to understand the multiple permutations and complexity of a half an almud of Gemara, a quarter of a daf of Gemara, that's not going to happen in less than a few weeks. So, and to be able to explain it in 20 minutes, not going to happen. You just get an idea of it very quickly reminds you of the enormity of Torah and the smallness of the capacity of one's own capacity. A very, very humbling experience. And the issue here in the Gemara is really what's troubling Rav Yehuda. So we're trying to understand, Rav Yehuda is troubled. We're trying to understand what is he actually troubled about, and there are a million different possibilities. And in understanding, so what you have to do when that happens is you're either going to spend weeks on it and you're going to try and devote your life to mastering this piece of Gemara, which is a worthy cause to devote your life to, or you're going to have to filter out the noise, even though the noise is coming from Nicholas. Is that?
Yeah. Hello.
Wow, it's so nice to see you. I don't know very much about this person. I know nothing about this person. All I know about him is he's a talmid on, I don't even know if you're Jewish or not.
No.
You're not Jewish.
Okay.
All I know is you're a talmid, you're a student on YouTube, and that Nicholas heard me say the other day, and you live in England or in South Africa?
Yeah.
In the UK. He heard me say the other day that I find it difficult that I don't see the people who are learning with me. And that's why I'm so grateful to you who are here every day and are actually learning. You're very, very important people in my lives. You're in my vision every day. I think of you all the time. But there are hundreds of others who I don't know, I don't see. A few interact with me, but not that many. And Nicholas heard me say that. So he got onto a plane to come. And he texted me yesterday to say he was looking for KBA because he thought that's where the Shira was and there was nothing going on there. And where is it? He's come to be face-to-face. He heard the Shir with Rabbi Meir, what the value of being face-to-face. And he got onto a plane from England to come to be at the Shir this morning.
Wow.
So wonderful to see you, Nicholas. So Rabbi Yehuda is troubled, and when you've got this these levels of complexity, you've got to filter out the noise. And by noise, I'm obviously not being disparaging, because who's causing the noise? You're talking about Rishonim, you're talking about Acharonim, you're talking about the greatest Torah minds in history are creating the noise, so to say. But if you're going to make sense of it, you've actually got to focus down and say, this is where I'm focused. And what I've chosen to understand is how Rashi understands the Gemara, according to the way the Ktsos HaChoshen understands Rashi. But when the Ktsos HaChoshen explains Rashi, you need to know all the other Achronim from the time of the Beis Halevi and onwards go ballistic with what's wrong with it and why it can't be and how many other different ways there are of explaining Rashi, and it tries to resolve it. So you just have to be able to settle down a little bit and focus and try and understand things as they are. What is the issue? To understand this Gemara, you need two pictures in your mind. You need the picture of a person sitting on top of a horse, and you need the picture of somebody leading a horse. Those are the two pictures you have to have in your mind. Says the Gemara at the bottom of Chet Amud Aleph, Omar Rav Yosef, Omar li Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yehuda was talking to me the other day, and he said, Shamit minei demar Shmuel, I heard from one of my rabbeim, from Shmuel, Tarti, two cases, רכוב ומנהיג, a case of a rider and a case of a leader. Chad kani v'chad lo kani. For one, the kinyan works, and for one, it doesn't. I said you need to have two pictures in your mind. You also need to have two concepts in your mind. One is kinyan. Kinyan is the action that changes the status of ownership from one to another. And muhzak is the status of ownership, having possession. Muhzak means possession. Kinyan means an act of ownership. So says Rav Yehuda, I heard from Shmuel that in these two cases, one is riding, one is leading, one is a valid kinyan and one is not a valid kinyan. V'lo yadana he minayo, and I don't know which one was which. I don't remember which one he said was a valid one and which one was not. So the Gemara goes in to try and analyze it. If it's talking about just two separate cases, a rider and a leader. If somebody's leading an animal, we know that's a kinyan. That's called a kinyan meshicha. There's nothing to be debating. So clearly he's saying the rider isn't a kinyan. Sitting on top of an animal is not a kinyan. We'll understand why. So that can't be his dilemma, because that's clear. His question must be where two people come before us, a rider and a leader of the horse. and each one says it's mine. My רכוב עדיף דהתפיס בה? Is the rider better and stronger because he actually has ownership, he holds the horse? Or ומנהיג עדיף, or maybe the one who's leading the horse, although he's only holding the reins, he's not sitting on the horse, but he's causing the horse to move. The azla machmata, it goes because of this person. And then Rav Yosef tries to work it out and resolve it from a case of kilayim, where a man is leading a donkey and an ox. And we know you can't have them spanned in together. And two cases, one is leading them and one is sitting in the carriage, and there's an ox and a donkey pulling the carriage. And we come to the conclusion that the one who's sitting is not transgressed. Because just sitting in the carriage, that's not using an ox and a donkey. But if you're leading them, you're causing them to move, then you're spanning in, you're causing the energy, and then you are transgressing that prohibition of spanning in an ox and a donkey together. That's basically the Gemara. What causes all the confusion in Rashi is explaining, we're talking about a case where each one claims, I had it first, and the other one took it away from me. I was sitting on the horse, and this person came and started drawing the horse. But it's my horse, I'm sitting on it already. The horse belonged to nobody initially. And the other one says, no, yes, I started drawing it. He's sitting on it, was nothing. He didn't do a kinyan. So the question Rashi says is, which one actually works? The way Rashi understands it, if you look at it a little further down in Rashi, they both come before us. One is riding, one is drawing, which is a similar case to the Mishnah. So why don't we see the Mishnah says you divide the animal equally in such a case? Says Rashi, they both come before us. Each one says it's all mine, I got it first. Or, as the Pnei Yeshua explains Rashi, it's not that I got to it first. We acknowledge that we both got to it simultaneously, explains the Pnei Yeshua. So the difference between the Mishnah and our case is that in the Mishnah's case, the issue is one of timing. Who had it first? Two people holding on to a talis, who grabbed it first? A rider and a drawer of an animal, who got there first? And we have no information. We don't know who got there first. So yachloka, we have to divide it. Here they acknowledge that it was simultaneous. The issue is not who got it first. The issue is not what happened. We know exactly what happened. At exactly the same moment, the one got onto the horse and the one started drawing the horse. The question is, which is the act of ownership? Which one transfers ownership to the individual? Jumping onto the horse and sitting on the horse like a master? Again, think of your picture. The man sitting on a horse. So he owns it. Or a man pulling a horse. He's doing a kinyan, he's pulling. Which one is the more powerful? Do we say, hey adif, רכוב adif, is the rider preferable? The ha-tafis bay, that's the key in Rashi, that brings the tzesachoshen to say, Rashi is talking about muchzak. That means, I can't come into your house and do a kinyan on your Rolex watch. You're muchzak, it's in your possession. If the Rolex watch is in the street and we don't know who owns it, nobody owns it, and I lift it up, I can do a kinyan, but I can't walk into your house and do a kinyan on your Rolex. Says Rashi, this man's drawing a horse which is in the possession of another man who's on top of the horse. A kinyan doesn't work against somebody who's muchzak, against somebody who has possession. The only time that Mashiach works, drawing a horse will work if nobody's sitting on it. But you can't draw a horse that somebody else is sitting on. And this is what causes all this consternation in Rashi, because in the next Rashi he says, or maybe the manhig, the one who's leading the horse, is the more powerful one. This is the greater act because bekinyan as a kinyan. So they all ask, what is Rashi saying? Is he talking about who is muchzak or which is the kinyan? Is there? And the Tzesachoshen says it's quite clear that Rashi is talking about muchzak. So what does Rashi mean then about kinyan? And then the Gemara wants to learn from the case of kilayim, and the Gemara comes to the conclusion, as Rashi says, Poeta kasava lav midi avid. The person sitting in the coach is not acting, he's not doing anything active. He's just sitting in the coach. What we learn from the case of kilayim is that riding, sitting on an animal, is not an action. It's passive. And a kinyan has to be active, not passive. So the way I want to understand Rashi is, his question is not, is this a muchzak or isn't it a muchzak? Is this a kinyan, isn't it? The question is, when you have a kinyan performed on something where there is a muchzak, There's an active ownership. But there's somebody who's possessing it. Can the kinyan work? What kind of relationship do these things have to each other? Now, where a person's a muhzak, you've got the Rolex in your house, and I say to you, where does this Rolex come from? And you say, I bought it. That's the end of the conversation, as we discussed in the Rav Moshe Feinstein a few days ago. But what happens if you say, no, it's just in my house. I've never done a kinyan on it. I never bought it. I've never picked it up. Nobody ever gave it to me. It's in my house. That's not a muhzak. So at that point, if I do a kinyan, maybe it does work. So what we're looking at here is muhzak, possession, that wasn't initiated by a kinyan. That's really, according to Rashi, what the whole issue of this Gemara is. When there is a case of possession that wasn't initiated by an act of acquisition, it's just status. And somebody else does the kinyan, somebody else is actually active. And what we need to understand from a philosophic perspective in this Gemara, from an understanding in this, is that ownership is not a function of status. Although that's what the Gemara is looking at, and the Gemara resolves it from the case of Kilayim. Ownership is not a question of status. But if you think of it to take it to a leadership position, man says, this company is mine. I'm in charge here. I'm the CEO. How come? Because I sit in the corner office and it says CEO on the door. So you're muhzak, you're sitting in the corner office. Nobody else is sitting in the corner office. Does that make you the CEO? Or do you need to have kinyan? Kinyan means you have the capacity to affect change. That's what kinyan is. Every kinyan is a subject affecting change on an object, changing its position, moving it from place A to place B, doing something in the object, changing its makeup, its nature. We talked about the shinui with a gun of making a change in an object. If one stolen it, makes it yours. You make something yours by having the capacity to affect change. If you don't have the capacity to affect change, you might have the status of an owner, but you're not actually. That's not what ownership means in the Torah. You might have the status of the CEO, of the chief, but you can't affect change, or you haven't affect change. When we say in the beginning of the Shmoneh Esrei, we say about Hashem, V'konei hakol. Hashem, you own everything. Why don't we say borei hakol? You created everything. You own everything. Did he buy it from someone? Is it about ownership? Hashem owns the universe? Yes, he does own the universe. Why? Because he created it. So why do we say konei hakol? It never bothered you. It bothers me 3 times a day. I say it because it's in the Siddur. But I keep on asking myself, konei hakol, is that the most I can say? Can't I say borei hakol? But konei is greater than borei in a way. Because borei gives you status. Creation gives you status. I am the creator. I created this. It's mine. That's great. That's very important. But konei is an ongoing capacity to affect change. It's all very well to say, I created it. That's history. You have that in business sometimes. You have a founder who's done nothing in the business since he founded it. And you've got the people in the business who are getting resentful. You don't know how many times have you come across that. You're going to get resentful. These investors, they put some money in, great. But they've done nothing since then. We've worked our lives out for years. And now we want to sell and they want 80% of the sale, of the profit. Yeah, they created it. They're the owners. But they can't affect change. They've never affected change. They've never done anything. You understand what kinyan is. Konei is not just the ability, not just the status of ownership through creation or any other form. It's the ongoing capacity to affect change. When we talk about a kinyan of a baal le'ishto, a husband has a kinyan over his wife. And we've talked about Reb Shimon Shkop's idea that kinyan is ongoing. It's not that at the wedding day a man put a ring on his wife and now she belongs to him, so to say. It's ongoing. If you can't affect change, if you can't inspire her, if you can't uplift her, if you can't cheer her up, if you can't move her, then there's no kinyan. If you're a leader of a group of people and you can't move them, you can't inspire them, you can't change them, you've just got the status. If we look at this philosophically, as I said, it's such a beautiful and multi-complex sort of a sugya. But if we just try and get to some of the essence of it, of muhzak that is not initiated by kinyan, muhzak is just me sitting on top of the horse. How I got there is not important. I never moved the horse. I don't even know how to move the horse. I'm kicking the horse doesn't move. That sometimes happens to people who sit on horses and don't know what they're doing. They can't get the horse to move. But I'm the owner, it's my horse. It's not your horse. You belong to the horse. The horse is deciding what to do and what not to do. And then you want another person who takes the reins of the horse and says, and the horse follows him. That's koine. He's the owner. He has mastery. He knows how to effect change. And so as we look at our own situations and the situations of people around us, always important to think about the levels of ownership. To what extent am I able to effect change? To understand the Ribbono Shel Olam's status as Konei HaKol is not just that he created the world, but that as Konei HaKol, he effects change in the world every second of every day. Hashem is bringing about change in the molecular structure of the world, in the atomic structure of the world, in the events of history. Every moment he's guiding changes in the world. That's Kinyan. To be able to effect change is the essence of mastery and ownership.